We'll call the committee to order. Today, the hearings on sanctions and financial pressure, major national security tools. And I will begin by saying that this committee has played a leading role in applying sanctions and related elements of financial pressure to address major U.S. national security threats. We've used America's economic might to help stop terrorists, to counter Iran and North Korea's nuclear programs, and to respond to Russian aggression and the degradation of democracy in Venezuela. Today, we are joined by three former officials with unique experience in using these economic tools, and their testimony will help us ensure that the sanctions we've enacted are fully implemented while improving our ability to draft tough, effective legislation going forward. Senior members of this committee were united in bipartisan opposition to the Obama administration's deeply flawed deal, which handed over roughly $100 billion in sanctions relief in return for temporary restrictions on Iran's nuclear program. The Obama administration let up on Hezbollah in order to get the Iran nuclear deal. Our distinguished panel here, Mr. Juan Zarate is the chairman and co-founder of the Financial Integrity Network, and previously, as the members of this committee well know, Mr. Zarate was the Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for terrorist financing and financial crimes. Mr. Derek Maltz is the Executive Director of Government Relations at PenLink. Previously, Mr. Maltz led the Drug Enforcement Administration's Special Operations Division in actively targeting narcotics trafficking tied to Hezbollah. And both these gentlemen were involved in other operations that involved those of us on the committee as well. We appreciate their service, as we do Mr. Adam Zubin, because he also has assisted this country mightily in these endeavors. He's a distinguished practitioner in residence at Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies, and previously he was the Acting Undersecretary of the Treasury for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence. Mr. Maltz.
Chairman Royce and distinguished members of the committee, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to discuss these important topics for our national security. Chairman Royce, after hearing the news this week, I want to echo Juan's comment. I wanted to congratulate you and your family for an outstanding career in public service and all you've done for our nation. And I know firsthand, as Juan already alluded to, that you were very much the leader behind helping us get Victor Boot and put him in jail.
Thanks, Derek.
I was the agent in charge at the Special Operations Division for almost 10 years, and I'm in daily contact with all my friends in law enforcement around the globe. I'm very focused in on the threats to this country and how they impact our national security. As you remember, I lost my brother Michael in the U.S. Air Force Pararescue Unit in Afghanistan, so I'm extremely passionate about public safety and national security and accountability. My days at SOD, I witnessed tremendous successes, unbelievable workers. My last success, was when the Chapo Guzman was captured by the Mexican authorities based on a total U.S. interagency success. So I was very, very excited about that. But we'll never be safe in this country unless we get 100% full information sharing. I know that's kind of like a stretch to try to get 100%, but we could do a lot better. We need everyone on the same page, and that's to keep America safe. Everyone has equities, but we have to have them on the same page. The topic of unity effort has been my priority ever since I buried my brother, and will continue to be until I'm done. And that means that I'm going to try hard to unite the people, not divide them. I watched this threat grow all the years in the Special Operations Division, but luckily I got some good support, and we expanded the operation from 9 to 30 agencies to include our partners in the NYPD, who are out there on the front lines every day trying to protect us. I remain committed to work with Congress, this committee, and I want to help provide recommendations and solutions. I don't want to be the doom and gloom guy that's going to just keep bothering people and kind of blaming people. We can't beat these sophisticated criminal networks working in silos. We have myopic views at times in this country, and people are working very, very hard. So we want to put it all together. We want synergy. With the latest controversy in the news regarding Project Cassandra and the DEA's multi-agency operation against Hezbollah, let me make this clear. I want to offer suggestions, and I hope that Project Cassandra and the terror cases can result in productive discussions to develop better ways ahead. I would like to see our dedicated men and women in law enforcement, the intelligence community, and DOD come together in attacking Hezbollah. The government already has a solid transnational organized crime strategy. When are we going to put it into action and hold people accountable? The government has been looking at this for many years. This isn't rocket science, right? These are bad guys trying to destroy our way of life. Now we have to go after them in unity. We need to carry out President Trump's executive order and push hard against these biggest threats. I really don't believe it's productive to start playing the blame game and wasting time going back and forth, criticizing the past administration. We got to be more effective in the future. The threats to this country are moving at lightning speed, and we need more of a sense of urgency. There is an old saying, opportunities come and go. Well, in my personal opinion, having been the guy in charge of the special operations for 10 years, we lost a golden opportunity to crush Hezbollah. And that's what we want to do. And the guys and ladies in the law enforcement community and the other agencies are doing this job right now as we sit here today. So we need to support them and give them the resources. It makes no sense to play that political ping pong game going back and forth because no one's going to win and the bad guys are going to win. So let's look at the mud that they're stuck in with the politics and the bureaucracy. And let's start bringing people together. That's what we need to do. Terrorists are going to continue to tap in to the unbelievable funding streams of criminal activities. This one case after another, we see this, but we still have our terror investigators and our crime investigations going down two separate paths. We need to break down the walls. Who's going to do it? Who's going to step up and do it? We can't effectively eliminate the wall. We can't be effective if we don't eliminate these walls. We need AG, the DHS secretary, the DOD leaders, the intelligence community, committees like this to step up and tell people what they're going to do and what they're expected to do for the public. Let's make a commitment to the taxpayers that we're going to eliminate these barriers. Let's build up capabilities like these sanctions, because Victor Boot would probably still be out there if it wasn't for the sanctions. We exposed him. We created a vulnerability. And then law enforcement came in and took him off the playing field, right? So sadly, 16 years after 9/11, we're still talking about, information sharing. It's a disaster. We got to stop it. Terrorists are ruthless criminals, and they're looking to destroy our way of life. We're not going to stop it with just DOD engagement, sanctions, and intelligence collection. We need robust law enforcement prosecutions pursuant to the rule of law to bring these people back to face justice and get full debriefings. American people expect us to do this. We need action and sense of urgency. Thanks to this committee, I think we're going to be on the right path. We need to have a mutually supportive framework so the IC equities and the law enforcement equities are all met. The poor families awoke to the news of the 241 Americans that were killed in Beirut 34 years ago, right? Stavridis, Admiral Stavridis, General Kelly, they've been testifying for years about this emerging threat. How many more warning signs do we need? Michael Chertoff said they made al-Qaeda look like the minor leagues. I mean, what are we doing? We have to wake up and go after them hard. We're missing the accountability piece. So what I'd like to see is who's responsible in the U.S. government to be accountable for these interagency task forces? Who's going to make sure that American interests are protected? Not any one agency. So that's what I'd like to see. There's got to be open and collaborative efforts. In my view, the worst thing the country needs now is to spend taxpayers' money on another coordination center when we have a facility sitting out in Northern Virginia, right here in our backyard, with 30 agencies, 3 countries. There's probably more than 30 agencies now. We need to stop the madness, and I'm going to help try to do that in my capacity. Cannot stand alone. Sanctions cannot stand alone. All right? They have to be applied and enforced. Your statement, and I'm done, I promise, only as strong as the enforcement, right? The same thing in these strategies. You can write strategies all day long. Who's enforcing the strategies? Because they're good strategies. Thank you very much.
But Mr. Maltz, I wanted to ask you, there was a report last month alleging the previous administration impeded or at least did not pursue some efforts to go after Hezbollah activities. It was a big news item. It was abundantly clear that the administration's Iran policy was driven strictly by its pursuit of a nuclear deal with Iran, and then once secured, what it wanted to do was to preserve it. But your testimony focuses on Project Cassandra and how we can improve going forward. The Iran and Hezbollah's presence in the Western Hemisphere is pervasive and threatening. How can we improve the capabilities and cooperation of the governments of the region in making sure that they can stem this problem?
So thank you for the question. I mean, I know firsthand your level of engagement, because when I was the head of SOD, I frequently met with you and your people to discuss folks like Walid Makhlad and General Carvajal that were let go and to go back to their country of Venezuela. When you know, probably better than I, the connectivity to the military intelligence and the corruption and the weapons and the FARC, and also, as you know from studying this for years, they also had the connectivity of global drug trafficking around the world to generate funds. So, number one, let's talk about the resources. You need the right resources. Let's stop wasting government taxpayers' money by creating redundancies. People don't even know what we already have. Like there's centers like the Special Operations Division. I'm not waving the flag for them, but I lived it for 10 years. There's centers that actually do have some good foundation that we need to build on. We don't need to create new centers and waste money. For an example, to answer your question, we have the Australians, the Canadians, the Brits, who are all inundated with cocaine, for an example. Do you know that in Australia, they're selling still cocaine almost $250,000 a kilogram? And people wonder why terrorist organizations are moving cocaine. If you sell cocaine in America, it's like 35, I guess 40,000. I'm a little bit rusty on my updates, but I know for sure in Australia it's still up like 240,000. At one point it was 300. So you have to bring these countries together too. Europol, they're doing tremendous work over in Europe to bring people together, to bring intelligence together, but we need sound prosecution. Go after them right here, because they don't want to come back to America, and we have tremendous capabilities to get them, and we have tremendous laws. We have some really good prosecutors that are still out there that will help us. So if you get them back and you use, like, I don't want to pump up Adam, but OFAC and FinCEN, for an example, they're the ones that educated me on these powerful 981Ks, the 311 actions. You have to put that on steroids, and you have to have somebody accountable. If you're not willing to designate somebody to be responsible to the taxpayer to pull this together, it's never going to work.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member.
I'm sorry for your brother's loss in Afghanistan. I've spent a lot of time and effort on Afghan issues, as people know. One of the things that has disturbed me during all of these years, we have a long time ago could have eliminated the poppy crops, the opium production in Afghanistan. We could have done that easily years ago, and I've been involved with some classified approaches to that, and it would have been easy to do. We have not. Your brother and other people's sons and brothers from the United States have lost their lives because we have not cut off the funding, as we could have long ago, the opium production. And it seems to me that indicates that there are powerful economic forces at play preventing us from doing what's right by those who are going over there to defend us. Maybe you have some thoughts on that.
Well, the first thought is going back to Mr. Sherman's comment, because it has to be clarified. Everything we did at the Special Operations Division was pursuant to the rule of law. So we're 100% in support of, the Constitution and to bring these people to justice in the greatest country of the world. We don't believe in information sharing to people that shouldn't have access to the information. But if you have a government task force set up to go after the threats to this country, we need to share information. You can't have a system where our terrorist investigators don't share with the criminal investigators. That's a recipe for disaster. And by the way, 16 years after 9/11, what we did and what we implemented with information sharing is exactly what the American public would expect. There's no politics in information sharing.
I've only got a minute and a half.
I'm sorry, sir, but I had to address that because that really was irritating.
I wish it would have done in Brad's time, however, but that's okay, because we don't share information here.
But as far as Afghanistan, I'm not an expert on eradicating the poppies. I'm not saying disagree or agree. We're on the operations side. We saw the nexus between the Taliban and the drug traffickers.
Okay, let me just note this. It's not just the poppies. What we've got is we know someone is financing ISIL. Someone is financing these terrorists. There are huge financial interests, these international financial institutions that obviously are involved, and we have let them go. We have not focused on them.
I agree.
It's called blood money, especially when people like yourself and others have lost relatives and friends and sons and daughters to this terrorism. I would suggest that we need to focus on the international financial institutions that are engaged in this, spend the same type of effort as we have talked about with the Magnitsky Act, of focusing on those specific individuals that are engaged in this type of behavior that is financing terrorism, and the money's going somewhere. The crooked banks the crooked leaders from third world countries that are being bought off by the Chinese to steal the minerals from those countries. It's disgraceful. We're letting that go. I've yet to see major banks having someone sent to jail for being an accomplice to terrorism and ripping off third world countries. So anyway, with that said, thank you for your testimony today. Thank you, Ed, for your leadership on this and many other issues.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you. I'll go to Tom Marino, Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your service, and hopefully when you are done here, we will see you at the State Department.
Right. Thank you, Tom.
Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Mr. Maltz, I want to get right to you, and if anyone has any, wants to respond, please do so. As an 18-year prosecutor, both at the state and at the federal level, U.S. attorney, I've always had the concept of follow the money. Follow the money will take us to every one of those people involved, whether it's on a domestic basis or an international basis. Mr. Maltz, what can we do? What more can we do to follow the money of those not only growing the drugs and distributing them, but those also producing chemicals that are used for the end product? Now, let me give you one example quickly that I have. I was in Colombia not too long ago, and we were out in the coca fields. We took a helicopter, went down in the fields, and saw how they were destroying, quote, destroying coca plants. At one time, they were U.S. money that we gave Colombia were flying over the coca fields with Roundup, just a chemical that we used in our backyard to get rid of weeds. Well, the Colombian government stopped that because they said they were afraid it was causing cancer. I asked one of the members that were there, are you not afraid of that big swimming pool-sized pit that you dump all the chemicals in to produce your cocaine, and then it all seeps into the ground? And he didn't want to answer me on that. But what can we do internationally to follow the money?
Okay, so that's a great question. So let me answer this by saying that's exactly why I wrote a long paper on a case study to make America safer after we did the Lebanese-Canadian bank case, because it was a good model to move forward. However, we missed a lot of opportunities. So to give you an example, like these Patriot Act 311 and 981K actions gave us the ability to take $150 million out of an account in Lebanon. We actually ultimately forfeited $102 million in that case. The issue is the U.S. government needs more expertise on financial investigations. You are 100% correct when you talk about follow the money. The only way you're going to really shut these people down is if you take away their resources. And that's why what you hit on is exactly my #1 passion. If terrorists are turning to criminal networks for their funding, how can we have a system where the terrorist investigators and the intelligence community and others are not communicating properly with the law enforcement agencies, state and local, federal, and have this unity of effort to put it all together? Because it's so powerful. I was very impressed by the Patriot Act Just those two actions alone. And I'm not an expert by any means, but I will tell you, we learned from our partners at Treasury and other folks that were kind of educating us, but this is why a co-mingled, co-managed task force of the true experts in the country would be the most effective. Now, I keep going back to the Counter-Narco-Terrorism Operations Center we have in SOD. Yeah. The reason I talk about that center is because that center was developed and because the Attorney General, the FBI Director, and the DA Administrator said back in 2001, 2002, we need one unit that can look at the finances and the crossover, the overlap in these particular cases. So to really answer that, and thank you, that's a great question, and I wish that people would just focus on what you said, okay? Because if you get the right experts, like this guy and that guy, and there are people that are out there in the Beltway that can actually educate the law enforcement agents, train them. We have some really unbelievable financial contractors right now sitting at that Syntac in Virginia. Those are the people that followed the money around the world. I would have had no idea, honestly.
That kind of money has to leave a trail.
Exactly.
No matter where it's at. And I've worked with DEA for 18 years, one of the best agencies. I love working with the frontline people, the men and women. But then when we brought in Treasury and other departments, we were starting to bring the cocaine trade to its knees, and we just must get back to following that money.
100% agreed, and really anything you could do to support that in this committee, that would be one of my top recommendations. Get the resources to the follow the money strategy, get the banks, like right now what they're doing, which is really effective, they're actually talking to the banks like they've never done before and briefing them on these different threats. Yeah. A lot of these guys are cleared former federal people that have the clearances to be able to understand now what to look for.
I'm going to run out of time here. Mr. Maltz, you have anything you want to add into that?
I want to add something very important. When we talk about Bitcoin...
You're from Northeast Mobile,
yes,
right?
Yes, sir, New York. I will tell you that I witnessed firsthand the amazing capabilities of the United States government agencies crushing Silk Road and Alpha Bay, okay? These are the most sophisticated sites and Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, but when you put the best and brightest together and share the lessons learned and these techniques, we're unstoppable. So put them together. That's the key.
Appreciate it. I'm out of time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Maltz, as a native New Yorker, I love how you sound. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
I yield back.
Mr. Maltz, I appreciate your willingness to speak out on the Obama administration's obstruction of justice regarding Project Cassandra. The U.S. has a clear national security obligation to respond to Hezbollah's criminal and terrorist activities. To what extent can the Trump administration reverse the damage of the last 8 years and issue indictments against Hezbollah agents?
Again, going back to the fundamental point I've been saying all morning is information sharing at 100%, break down the damn walls between the terror and the crime investigators, okay, provide the financial experts what they need and the resources. And to answer the other question about IT, we are in the dark ages and we need to upgrade those systems of collaboration and information sharing. But the thing is that we have to remember that prosecutions pursuant to the rule of law are powerful, and if you look back over time, there weren't that many. As soon as you raise the name Hezbollah, it's a terrorist group. Well, no, they're international criminals, they're transnational criminals that are trying to destroy our country.
That's right.
So you must pull together your experts in every area. It's not one thing. And that's where we have to really change our culture and thought process. And folks in this room can help do that.
Well, and I hope that the U.S. agencies have learned some lessons, like Homeland Security and DOJ.
No, they have not learned because
and I question that. You know, Project Cassandra is a perfect example of those walls being built up between, and they have not moved forward.
Like I've said over and over again, and think about this, put your taxpayer hat on. When we did that action, we actually identified hundreds of used car businesses in America sending cars to West Africa. We only included 30 in the 311 action and the civil complaint because of limited sharing, okay? So that's unacceptable. And when is somebody going to be held accountable for that?
Thank you.
I think that transnational organization trade out of Africa into the Western Hemisphere is real, and the tri-border area where I have been is real, and that puts it right in our backyard. And I guess, Mr. Maltz, your experience with DEA, are we making any progress to stop the flow of this transnational criminal organization that Iran has been supporting?
We have made progress. I mean, that's why I wrote a long paper about the whole Lebanese-Canadian bank and some of the stuff that we did. However, we have so much work to do. They're working hard right now in these operations, and I know that they're going to make some more, have some more success. However, we will never make the progress that you're looking for if we don't get the expertise together. We have to have the unity of effort like the strategy under Obama called for, President Obama, and under President Trump, it's the same words. But the words are no good. You need the action. You need the experts together. And until that happens, we're going to be talking about this, and hopefully nothing catastrophic happens. I mean, like I said, 2008, Michael Chertoff made it clear. Hezbollah makes Al-Qaeda look like the minor leagues, right? Jim Stavridis with his fireball slide. When Islamic, narco, terrorists, and extremists get together, that's a very bad nightmare. General Kelly has testified so many times about this emergence down in South America, Central America, the tri-border region, cocaine flowing into the Middle East, money's being made all over. So until we get our teams together and hold people accountable, we're going to be talking about this forever.
And as as a federal prosecutor of counterterrorism, I remember one of the first cases in the United States was actually a cigarette baby milk case from Hezbollah.
Well, it's funny you say that, because right now I'm like obsessing over this ongoing problem with illegal cigarette trafficking, EBT fraud, drug paraphernalia, synthetic drugs, all these different smaller type crimes coming together, commingling in one place, and then money's being sent through our financial system to Yemen, as an example. So until we get our experts to share that intelligence, sit in the room, break down the walls, we're going to be talking about this for a long time.
I want to thank the witnesses for your excellent testimony on sanctions and the way we can use law enforcement to effectuate our national security. And I think your testimony will help us in that effort. So again, thank you, and this committee now stands adjourned.